Hello and welcome to Confidently Wrong, a show by regular dudes talking with confidence about content we have no right to speak about with any kind of authority, but do it anyway. I'm Wesley Nakamura, and as always, I'm joined by award-winning director Brian Redondo and Savon Jones, aka Captain Vonnie. This is episode 103, and we bask in the glory that is the finale of The Last of Us Season 1. I'm confident that it's going to be the best show you've ever listened to, and well, hey, if it's not, you can always ask us for a refund.
Incredible!
Hello, gentlemen. Welcome back to our next episode, our newest episode, our latest episode. Oh, I can't wait to
This
talk about
episode.
This episode.
Let's go.
We're going to talk about The Last of Us, which I've been wanting to get back to. We just had the season finale. We are literally recording this at 10:32 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. No, wait. Daylight Saving Time. Eastern Daylight Saving Time, which means the episode has been out for 1 hour and a half, and we spent an hour of that watching it. So we are getting the most up-to-date update of this
Hot
show.
off the press, man.
Ooh,
We are
listen,
on this.
Hopefully this will come
Sizzling.
out tomorrow because I'm on spring break, so hopefully I'll have time to put it together. Gentlemen,
You on break? That's so
good to see you.
Hello.
Before we jump into the finale, so we're gonna dive into the finale. Oh my god, there's so much there. Any thoughts on the series in general, previous episodes, especially the more recent ones, where Joel was quite incapacitated? Savon, how you feeling?
Yeah, man. First of all, feeling great. Thank you for asking. I love,
Amazing.
checking up.
No
Feeling
Sunday
good.
scaries.
No, I don't know about all that. But that's a whole nother thing. No, the Sunday scaries are perpetual.
Okay,
Now
everyday
it's more like the
scaries.
Sunday just like acceptances.
Gotcha.
It is, we're
Oh,
there.
I like that. Sunday
five-
acceptances.
The 5 stages of grief.
Yeah, just
daily
like,
affirmation.
I'm here. Yeah, I'm at the acceptance piece at this point of the night.
All right.
But yeah, these last couple episodes, it's been fun. You know, I didn't expect them to make an entire episode based on the Last of Us DLC. You know, Left Behind, I think is what it was called.
Oh, yeah.
Just completely unexpected, and then that was another one of those. They adapted so many moments one to one, and it was a faithful reenactment. And again, they've been great about, if you see the games, you're going to appreciate this. If you haven't seen the games, you're still going to appreciate this. And, you know, giving us some much needed just Ellie backstory and characterization. It was nice to see that Bella Ramsey can hold her own as the lead without Joel and Pedro Pascal's, you know, veteran acting experience. You would think, oh, is he carrying the show? We got to see, no, is he doing his part? Yes. Is Bella Ramsey also doing her thing where, you know, the entire flashback and her friendship with her friend Riley, all of the interactions with David the cannibal, and that entire awful situation and her fighting out of it, she can carry an episode and can act her ass off. And it wasn't something that I had doubts about, but just seeing it in front of me was very reassuring, especially, you know, I guess we'll talk more about what we expect for the next season, but those 2 episodes were a very good sign.
Yeah, Grogu can't hold down his own episode. Ellie
Yeah,
sure
he's just-
can.
The language facilities for Grogu just aren't quite there. You know, I think Ellie has a much, in many regards, better way with words, or worse way with words, depending on who you're asking or who she's talking to.
Ellie and Riley's episode, I think that was 8, maybe 7 or 8.
7.
7. Honestly, I felt like that was one of my least interesting episodes. The one that I just was not as invested in compared to much of the other ones. And I think because, you know, I'm super invested in how the story is progressing, the main story, like Joel and Ellie on their adventures, and that one didn't quite have as much tie-in to the current day stuff. Obviously, by the end, we're starting to see the connection between, you know, Riley telling her to keep going and her deciding to keep going with Joel and to savor every moment and to try and make it work as long as you possibly can. So I understand like the function of it. I think that episode though just dragged on a little bit too long. I thought it could have been just a little bit more. And I don't know why. Maybe there was just something like missing there for me personally. And I was just like, let's
Yeah,
get
a
back to the
heart.
Joel. Let's just get back to the Joel and
Boo.
Ellie story. Not that I didn't appreciate it. It's still a really good episode. I just thought of the episodes, that was probably the one that I was like the most like, oh, let me check my phone a little bit here and there. And in none of the other episodes,
Heathen.
Wow.
yeah, none of the episodes have
Heathen.
been like that. So I just want to say that. And then the next episode, episode 9, with David and that whole group, holy cow, that was a phenomenal like trip. The whole thing was just like had me just gripping the edge of my couch, just seeing what happened next, like unraveling this mystery of who David is and how he was going to be helpful, and then it turns out he's not very helpful at all. Like this guy was just kind of a menace. Um,
Eating the
almost a
big bowl.
yeah, almost a Joker character in some ways, right? Like he kind of represents himself in one way, and it turns out like he's just an unreliable narrator. Like this man just really just wanted some uh wanted the lust of blood and power and rape and all of this stuff. So that episode was incredible. What a way to like have set you up for the finale. So it was pretty cool. Brian?
Oh man, I can't believe you felt that way about episode 7, Left Behind, R.I.P. Riley. Like,
Yeah.
come on, were you not into all of the chemistry and tension between the two characters, all the headbutting about whether or not the Fireflies were good, and then that climactic moment when they both realize that they're bit and they deal with it in completely opposite ways. Like that was just such a heart-wrenching
It,
moment. I don't
dude,
know. I don't know how that did not speak to you, Wes. Like, come on, like teen romance? You're built for that.
dude, it's the defining element of Ellie's character. Her entire character arc is feeling abandoned and survivor's guilt, and this is literally the kickoff of that. And it ties into what happened in this most recent episode where she opens up to Joel about the first person she killed, right? Like that wasn't they even it's very clear that all of her motive, and I don't know, dog. That episode, I feel like retroactively got even better with how they tied it into the finale because
Agreed.
it made you understand where Ellie's coming from a lot more in a way that the game just didn't quite do.
Right,
And
because it was a DLC and you play the DLC after you've already completed the first game. So by them
mhm.
tacking it on to the story when Joel is injured, I I agree with you, Savon. It added a lot of depth to that backstory and gave a sense of urgency to what Ellie was up to while Joel is out.
Yeah,
Now on go ahead, Savon.
actually, no, you got it because we'll talk about this when we get into the actual episode.
So I wanted to switch back over to episode 8 with David and the Cannibals.
Ooh, sounds like a new
Band,
band.
yeah, their next album forthcoming. It's called Ellie's Delicious,
Yes.
and so I thought that was like a very tense episode. It was devilish and all of that. I actually think that for me, maybe that was a little bit of a weaker episode.
Really?
Um, just because of the turn that David makes in the story. In the game it makes sense a lot because you're suddenly thrust into Ellie's shoes. You're playing Ellie, and then in that level, right, it's basically a level of the game. There's a huge boss fight at the end, and it's with David in the burning building, and he's coming after you, and he's all sneaky, and you got to figure out a way to one up him and stab him. Basically stab him
He's
a lot.
impossible to kill.
Yeah, I remember being very frustrated at that point in the game because it's difficult. When that got translated into the episode, though, like him going from a ambiguously amoral or morally ambiguous leader of another group of human survivors, and then suddenly doing this hard heel turn into not only cannibal, but he's also just like a child predator, rapist, like all of the above. Some guy who just loves violence.
Every bad
Like,
thing, every bad quality.
yeah, like almost like every villainous trope you could throw at somebody, all onto one character in the scope of one episode. it just felt like a little too much. However, that episode does stick the landing when Ellie saves herself and then thrusts herself into the arms of Joel, and you get the baby girl, I got you, like,
Yeah.
which is phenomenal moment. So, uh, but yeah, so for me, episode 8, penultimate episode to the season, maybe a little on the shakier end, right?
Mm.
I think
You know,
I wanted
Wow.
something
All right.
else at that
You
point.
know, I think I agree with Brian. I think it gets more entertaining from a visceral standpoint, but in terms of just, okay, what does it actually do for the story? It doesn't do nearly as much. Like, you don't get it twisted. It does important things to show Ellie needs to be self sufficient and she has to solve her own problems. But you're right. This felt like something that was right out of the post-apocalyptic movie, just like playbook bingo board. It's like, oh, it's the end of the world.
Yeah,
Okay, somewhere someone's practicing cannibalism, whether it's Fallout, whether it's Walking Dead, whether it's
yeah,
World War
Terminus, right?
Z. Yeah, any type of end of the world thing. Some people are like, all right, we're just gonna start eating people. So I agree. It was a good episode from a raw entertainment value, but I don't think it brought anything new to the table from the genre that we haven't already seen, which isn't a bad thing, but that's what I appreciated more about the Left Behind episode. Like, you don't get that type of character. I enjoyed it the same reason I enjoyed the Bill and what was it, Bill and Ted episode, but a little bit
I
different.
wish there was a Bill and Ted episode.
Oh dang it! It wasn't Ted. It was come
Keanu
on.
Reeves just
Come on,
shows up in a phone
somebody,
booth.
come on, somebody help me out. Somebody
Frank,
help me out.
Frank.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Wild
It was good
Stallions.
for that. Like, it was good for that reason, but even more because it was about like Ellie's character development. But it doesn't take away from it. But yeah, I don't know. I think I'm glad I'm on the same side as Highbrow Brian.
Interesting. No, I really loved especially the ending, but I mean the whole thing was just like it was just a slow turn until you just saw more and more and more about how dangerous this situation was, and we know that the season is coming to an end. We know that Ellie needs to survive. We just don't know how it's going to happen. We think that Joel's going to save her. He doesn't. She ends up saving herself, but in the process loses herself. And that has huge ramifications for like her relationship with Joel, and that's how we open when we finally see them in this episode. We see that she's completely traumatized and she's having a hard time connecting with Joel. All of that is because of the things that she went through in this previous episode, and it's clearly been some time, right? They're no longer in the snow, they're still walking, and she's still having to process all of these things, and she just is having a hard time like reconnecting back into real life or what the world that's in front of her. And that, I mean, I feel like that probably makes sense. I'm not I'm not a therapist, I'm not a psychologist, I haven't done any research on this, but for sure, right, you're gonna
So we should
have
trust you.
periods. Yeah, not at all, but you're gonna,
Source, trust me, bro.
it makes sense, right? I mean, if we've been through like trauma informed, whatever, responsiveness and teaching and stuff, right? There's going to be moments where people who have been through trauma are going to like disconnect from what's in front of them for a minute, right? They're going to have a hard time dealing with something that's present because their brain is focusing on other things, at certain times. And so that to me was like, wow, like this is really going to like put a wrench into things. And it did. I mean, they're really having a hard time actually connecting throughout this whole last episode. And I think that's probably why my wife was like, wow, that was so unsatisfying. And I think part of it is because they were having a hard time connecting. I mean, obviously the ending is also why it was unsatisfying for her. But we'll get there. So clearly we're talking about spoilers in in the show. If you haven't figured that out, we're definitely spoiling things. But now we're going to spoil the finale. So for the finale, we get a pretty amazing intro and something we haven't seen in the games. Featuring Ashley Johnson as the actress who's playing Anna, the mom of Ellie. And it turns out this connection is also that Ashley Johnson voiced Ellie in the Last of Us video game. So people were looking forward to seeing that. And we get some just really cool, like lifted straight from the game scenes from the show or in the show. What moment did you connect with? What stood out to you? What did you enjoy? Brian, take us through this finale. What was it all about for you?
Well, for me, the entire season, really, all the standout moments to me have been the ones I've never experienced before. So basically, where the TV adaptation is taking a sharp turn away from the source material and inventing something new, giving us something meaty to sink our teeth in. And so
Our
I think
teeths in.
our teeths, our tooths. So
Our
seeing
mall.
Ashley Johnson play Ellie's mom, I mean that was fantastic. I did not see that one coming at all.
Did you
Me
recognize
neither.
her from anything else?
I do, because she played the little girl in the 80s sitcom Growing Pains, which I used to watch, and she basically looks exactly the
Oh.
same as she did back then. So
Which
yeah,
one is Growing Pains?
uh,
Kirk Cameron?
you know Robin Thicke, his dad, Alan
Yeah,
Thicke.
Alan Thicke.
Alan Thicke, yeah. Who wrote the theme song Growing Pains. Use that at bar trivia next
Oh,
time.
Kirk Cameron, that show.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kirk Cameron, who's now like a
Super
Christian
religious
zealot.
evangelical. Yeah.
Don't watch any of his movies. Anyway, but watch Ashley Johnson. She's fantastic. I love this cameo for her. And what was great about her giving birth to Ellie was we got a little bit of an explanation, more of an explanation for why Ellie could possibly be immune to the
At least a
cordyceps.
hypothesis, right?
A hypothesis, right?
Yeah.
There's obviously there's no confirmation in the world, but I think the speculation is enough to help the audience understand, what is going on and why they believe in her, and also why Marlene had a connection to Ellie, was willing to go through certain hoops to get her to Salt Lake City, and also why it was hard for Marlene later. I think all of that connective tissue added more nuance to the story. So I really appreciate that they gave us that. And there are a few other things that maybe you guys are going to talk about.
Sav?
Ooh, yeah. In
For
terms
this being
of
a short episode, this had a lot in it.
yeah, I mean, because it was all very meaningful. And I mean, we've talked in previous episodes about how sometimes for a show, you just gotta let it breathe. If you've done the part you need to done and told the story you need to tell, let it in. Don't make it longer than it needs to be. Like let it, do what you gotta do. I think, I mean, one, I love the giraffe scene being lifted straight out. Giraffe scene was always one of my favorites. Seeing the giraffe, seeing, sad Ellie turn back into like a kid again and kind of reclaim some of that innocence was dope, because you can kind of see Joel lean into it a bit too, which was fun. I mean, I'm gonna co-sign everything with Brian about just having that different scene. I think what I enjoyed the most in just the episode in general was they, not to say that they poorly characterized Marlene or anything, but man, Marlene was great in this episode. You really get a feeling of that sense of responsibility and weight that she carries, and it does a much better job of, to your point, when you think about Joel's decision. I think the game had a much more one-sided portrayal of it just by virtue of you playing so much from only his perspective. Right. And I think these outside perspectives you get in the show really does paint his decision. I mean, we're going to talk about his decision, but it's going to paint it in a light that honestly is less marred by you being the person who controls him throughout the game. Because a lot of people, I think sympathize with him in a way. I'm like, are you tripping? Or did we play the same game? Well, I guess you played as him the whole time, so you overly relate with him. So really, really enjoyed that. But the big thing I also enjoyed was, because when we talked about this a little bit in the pre-show, right, of in the game, the parts leading up and there's a lot of action in this last sequence of them getting to meet the Fireflies, and all of that is pretty much cut out. Like there's an entire raging water scene and people almost drown, and it's a whole thing. They cut all that out, and you just get Joel emotionally opening up, and I was not ready. Yeah, I was not ready for that in the slightest, and it was great. They've done a great job of giving us really good character moments to fill in for the action that they decided, hey, we're going to actually cut a lot of this out for the sake of a better story.
Hey, correct me if I'm wrong, but the game doesn't mention Joel's suicide attempt, right?
No, that's completely new, I think.
I was going to say, I don't remember that, but that's not reliable because I don't remember anything. So,
I think that's new, the scar thing, because they don't really talk about his scar or the hearing thing in the games either.
I think kudos to the writers, and I don't know if it was one writer or many writers that kind of got through this, but that conversation between Joel and Ellie, they did a really good job of not being on the nose with it, right? So they just kind of let them say something, and then they leave it up to you as the watcher, as the viewer, to sort of fill in a few of the blanks based on their reactions, based on their breathing, based on their looks that they're giving each other. And I think that's really hard to do, right? It's so easy as someone who's just like, who can, like, I can write competently, but like if I was writing a creative short story, I would probably write, I didn't kill anybody, it was you who saved me, it was blah blah. But like,
I want to see that version.
it's too, that would just be too much, like too cheesy and too much too unrealistic, I think, and not dramatized, and not respecting the ability, or the like the desire of the viewer to actually think and interpret for themselves. And the writers did a really good job, and maybe it was just Mason who wrote this episode, but did a really good job of just giving us enough and then letting us fill in all of the things around it based on what we know about them. I thought that was really cool. And the thing that stood out to me in this episode, like, or the thing that I was like probably most bothered by, in a good way, like bothered by in the show, was Joel lying to Ellie afterwards. Right? Like, in some ways, he lacked the courage to tell her, this is what happened, this is what I did, and this is why I did it. And he takes the, like, quote unquote easy way out and tells her, like, oh, the Raiders came. I just barely got you out. There was no actual cure
such
here.
a bad lie.
It's so yeah. And I was
there were
just like,
dozens
so
of you who were
mad.
immune.
Yeah.
But they gave up.
And it was just like, and it makes sense. And I think that's one of the brilliant moves that the game made, and that the show is making, is like, Ellie deep down knows that he's lying. And for sure, this is something that, we know there's going to be a season 2 that they can explore. And the game explored this. The second game explored this in great detail. But man, just, it was so easy for him to lie, even though he had just said, you're the reason I'm excited to, like, see tomorrow. I mean, the reason that I'm, like, able to get up in the morning is because you're here. And then this man just straight up lied to a 14-year-old girl without even batting an eye, to protect himself, to protect her image of him. And I know that parents do that sometimes, and that people do that.
Her life, like,
other.
on the slick.
Yeah,
protected her
to play
life.
devil's
like,
advocate.
Yeah, in fairness, I don't disagree with you, but he saved her life,
And he
whether
could have
she
said
wanted
that,
her
though.
to or not.
Right, but he could have said that. He could have said, like, or,
coulda, woulda, for shoulda.
He could have implied it, if we're saying that he doesn't have to be on the nose with it. But, when she says, how's Marlene? Or did she, is Marlene okay? And he doesn't answer, she knows something's wrong. Like, she knows he saw her. He knows that she knows she's not okay, and so she's like, well, you wouldn't have known that she's not okay unless you were involved in that. So,
she probably woke up when he fired the gun. He was like in his arms.
Well, she was out
as he's killing Marlene.
She was pretty far out, but yeah.
Either way, when she woke up, it's just clear, like, none of this is adding up. Like, it doesn't take.
Yeah.
She's not a dum-dum. She
Right.
can piece together, even if she doesn't know the explicit details. She can recognize this added up.
But does she need to lie to herself too, so that her non-sacrifice wasn't for nothing? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So she's gonna have to lie to herself too. So it's such a brilliant move, and yet it was so aggravating, right? Because as a watcher, you're like, why are you lying like this? Just tell her the truth. Like, it's so much worse that you're lying about it, and you're lying in such, like, a weird way. Like, there's just, like,
I thought the line was the most realistic part.
Yeah. Oh, it's so super realistic. It was just
like, I guess that's the part I understood the most. I was like, yo.
Oh, 100%.
Everything else, I was like, that was the part I was like, okay, well, I guess if there's one thing you're doing, then I agree with this line. The rest of this, I was like, I cannot.
You agree with him lying, or you agree that he would have lied in the scenario?
I agree. Lying was the right thing for him to do.
You think so?
Yeah,
I think he should have said what it was. I think, like, she would have understood. She wouldn't have been mad, but she would have understood. And, like, part of the reason that he's going through this is, like, the Fireflies didn't give her a choice, right? They didn't let her choose her own fate. They didn't let her choose what was going to happen. But then he just turns around and does the exact same thing. He doesn't let her decide, like,
so
to continue this thing with him, So again, like, both of them It's just like this is real life, and these are the tensions that happen, and these are the things that are going to happen. So I don't know. I just thought that was just such a brilliant move, and like was crazy as a watcher. You're like, why did you do that, Joel? Like you're just setting yourself up for failure here.
Every
Well, I
time you
think
say watcher, I think you're a Watu
right.
looking down on planet Earth.
What a viewer, audience member, audiencer.
I mean, I think the
I like
show
it.
went out of its way to drive the point home that Joel was less sympathetic in his actions, because I know it tries to make it feel like, oh, it can go one way or another, but just from how we've seen Ellie characterized, we know what she like. Marlene even calls him out for it. Like the elephant in the room
Yeah.
is that, is she not being given a choice? Yes, that's true, and that is maybe Joel has a point, but Marlene calls it out herself of, yo, we all, and us, the people watching the show, we all know that Ellie would absolutely sacrifice her life if it meant being able to cure this plague. Like from what we've seen with her character, again, the situation with Sam and Henry destroys her. It goes back to the episode Left Behind with Riley. She even spells it out to Joel. From what we know about Ellie's character, and again, Joel and Ellie have this connection, so this isn't like Joel doesn't know this about Ellie. Joel absolutely understands this about her. That's what makes it That's what makes it really complicated, but less complicated, is that he kind of does it for more selfish reasons. Because, and I don't know what's the space for us to talk about this, but the best thing the episode did was to kind of give us context that Marlene did carry a much heavier burden than Joel, and she was willing to have more resolve than Joel was, because honestly, she really did have a stronger, tighter, longer connection with Ellie than Joel possibly could. And
She's de facto caretaker, right?
yeah, like she's had,
I don't agree with that.
I mean, dude, she knew her.
It's
entire
longer,
life.
but I don't think it's deeper.
She has more of like a set responsibility, whereas Joel
but she wasn't
care
with
of
her
her
day
for
to
a few
day,
months.
and she was never with her day to day.
Yeah,
but that doesn't mean that
different.
she's not responsible for her.
No, she's responsible, but to say that her relationship is more than what Joel's is, I don't think that's true. Like there's just
maybe
not
not
a
interpersonally, but
there's just not a replacement
wise.
for spending every day with somebody, and they were spending months and months together, on the road. So I don't agree with that. I think Joel's, by the time we get to the end, we're fully understood that their connection to each other is now very similar to a father-daughter relationship. And so and that's never what Marlene's was. Marlene was maybe an aunt, but an aunt in a different state, right? Like Ellie never met Marlene before, Riley died.
Okay, here's a better way. I'll try and put it this way. Ellie was almost like Joel's emotional support child that helped him become, be able to learn to care and love again. And that's nice and dandy. But that is just a very different type of relationship than somebody who was there from the moment you were born, had to actually execute your mother, who they were lifelong friends with, carries the burden of now having to take care of this child, of your best friend,
and then ultimately
having. I mean, she's the reason she's alive, and I mean, I think,
but she doesn't take care of her. She gives her to Fedra.
Yeah, and gives Ellie a life that allows her to be fed, taken care of in a relatively safe place. That's a pretty good deal considering where things were going to go with Ellie, what we saw in the beginning of the episode. I don't think that, I think that really is meant to drive home, like, hey, Marlene did, like, even if Marlene is not a seen or appreciated character in the same way, she really did do everything for Ellie, including setting up her. My point more so is that Joel's ultimate connection with her felt like I think it was framed as being a bit more selfish than Marlene's, which had equal levels of emotional investment, but she was willing to make the hard call for the greater good. And I think it kind of shows that, both of them cared deeply, but one was willing to do what was for the greater good. And I do think that just when you get down to it, I don't know. I value Marlene. I think Marlene is right when she says that this is harder for me than it is for you, Joel. Like when she kind of says that, I completely agree.
I love this characterization of Ellie as Joel's emotional support dog.
I mean, that's what it is.
It's a service dog that he can't get rid of.
I mean, that's what it comes down to. Like, Ellie helps Joel to learn to live and learn to love again and all that stuff, and that's good for Joel and helping him open up. but he was literally willing to throw away mankind's cure because he couldn't let that go. And I'm like, yo, that is that is going from caring about something to caring about it in a destructive way. Again, that's what makes the ending so compelling and good. But I think the show was a lot less ambiguous about that than the game was. The show makes it clear, like, that's why they added in the suicide attempt thing. It really shows, you know what? I think what made me sympathize a little bit less with Joel this episode was at the end when they're walking in the hills after all of this. Joel has just broken what is the most devastating news to Ellie, thinking about her survivor's guilt, this whole journey, everything she's been through. She talks about all this awful stuff. It can't have been for nothing. She's sad, even regardless of like her not knowing all the stuff with a lie or whatever. That aside, she's sad because they've gone through this ridiculous journey. And she's watched all these people die and she thought, oh, I could have done something about it. And now she can't. And Joel is like whistling Winn-Dixie with a pep in his step, reminiscing about his daughter, telling stories. You would have liked her. And it's just like, dog, read the room. This girl is devastated and you are happy as a clam because you get to have the satisfaction of, he knows the truth and he's able to maybe live with it because he ultimately gets what he wants. But it's not empathetic at all to the situation Ellie's been through. The lie aside, the fact that he's just all whistling Winn-Dixie in the woods, hey, I can teach you how to play guitar. I'm like, dog, you don't see this girl sad as hell because she wanted to save people. And it's not like Joel wouldn't have known that throughout the story because she talks about Sam and Henry and, it's not lost on him that she wants to, she takes pride in this idea that she could be a potential cure. She really leans into that. So I don't know, man.
I thought
Joel effed up.
I think definitely I'm 100% agreeing with you. I think the only thing I would like add on a layer is I think partly he's doing the like not happy, the like, let me tell you about Sarah, blah blah, I think you'd like her. I think he's also trying to cheer her up. He knows that she's sad. He knows that she's still dealing with the stuff from David, still dealing with the stuff from like what happened in St. Louis or Salt Lake. And so he's trying to find a connection point because she sort of shut him off, right? She's kind of closed down a little bit or a lot of it. And so he's trying to like find a way in to break her down, to break down her defenses or break down the walls that she's put up again. So, I mean, I get why he was doing that. And I agree with you 100% that like he's missing the point that she's really upset about like what happened and that she feels like they made this whole trek. It gave her life purpose, that she was going to be the reason for the cure. And yet it didn't happen either because what she probably suspects is that he didn't let her, which is what happened, right? Or because the Fireflies couldn't do it. And in either case, she feels that letdown that you're talking about. So,
Dad of the year.
Yeah.
Joel.
I mean, what else are you supposed to do as like a dad, right? Like, you're not just gonna let her like wallow forever. So
read the room is what you do. That man was not reading the room.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it also wasn't like the very next day. Like it had been, some amount of time.
Well, the thing is, I'm talking about her sadness, not in reference to the stuff that happened in the previous episodes. I'm talking about her sadness at the very end in the last season.
Yeah. No, but it had been some time. She had clothes again. She was like fully awake. Like the drugs have worn off. This wasn't like 2 hours later that she was dealing with this. This was maybe a day or 2 or 3, something like that.
Yeah, because they drove into the car broke down.
Yeah. So, I mean, it'd been some time. And so maybe he thought like, okay, now's the time. Like, let me try and cheer you up. And it wasn't working. She wasn't buying it. She was not buying what he was selling. Let's get into then what Savon is really getting into, which is we finally get to see things go kind of haywire. We get to see Joel do his, boy, I don't even know what to call it, man. That man turned into freaking Hitman.
Rambo?
Yeah.
Rambo, I think Rambo, John Wick, Mando.
So I think we should just get into Joel. So let's jump down to the last question. Are you agreeing with Joel's? How do we feel about Joel's choice to basically rampage through the hotel and massacre everyone in the hopes of saving Ellie from this procedure that Marlene tells him about? Sav, I think we have a sense of where you're going. So let's go to Brian first, and then maybe we'll get Sav's input.
I mean, it's the exact right move for the game and for the TV show. Joel has to do this. Yeah, I mean, to me, like this ending, Joel going on a rampage, sacrificing the world for his own needs, and then lying to the person he loves about it is precisely what makes The Last of Us so memorable. It's exactly why it's had such a cultural impact. When it first came out, and I'm certain people are going to be talking about this for a while, right? Now that the show has kind of blown up, and I
At
think
least till Succession comes out next week.
yeah, we'll be talking about it for 6 days. I think it actually like really ties the whole world together. It's one of depravity, where humans are a greater threat in a lot of instances than the zombies, the cordyceps infected folks. And it's really about humans and how they're struggling to get on and survive, and the types of evils that they put each other through. And so, I think, Joel rampaging through the hospital, it's the ending we deserve. It's not the one that we need. It's not the one that people want. Like everybody wants the rainbow ending, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh my god, they saved humanity. Like, no, like that
Now
that
they
is
play
not
guitar on a
happening.
sheep farm.
Yeah, like like nobody's gonna have the happy ending in this. And I think that's I hate to say lesson, but it's kind of like the ethos of the show. And so, him taking that away not only from Ellie but also the audience, uh, is going to be the thing that makes us rethink about everything else that happened, right? About like what was what exactly was important in this? Was it the fact that Ellie could be a cure, or was it the fact that you know she and Joel found a bond together that was threatened? And what are people going to do when something like that is threatened, right? Like we think about, I think Henry and Sam is a great uh, analogy or parallel to Joel and Ellie. Henry, I think one of my favorite moments of the entire season was when he's sitting down with Joel and saying like, "Hey man, am I the bad guy? I did bad guy things,
That makes me the
but
bad guy.
that makes me the bad guy, but I did it, for my brother, right? And you have somebody who you take care of. So what are you going to do, right?" And we see Joel pretty much take the same route that Henry did.
Kathleen too. Remember Kathleen with the whole stuff because she was beefing with Henry and Sam over her brother. Like we've seen this whole what would you do for your loved ones
exactly
extremities type deal. This is not new.
Yeah. So it's the ending that we needed, and I worry though that a lot of TV watchers out there are going to feel cheated by this. They're going to feel very disappointed. My mom, I watched the finale with my mom, and as soon as the credits roll, she's like, "Ah, that's it. I didn't like that." And I have a feeling a lot of people are going to feel the same way.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine.
It's real because it's not. It's like you whatever. Because even after once you get even through the second season / next game, it's like whatever you thought you were about to get, it's not what you're not about to get it.
Yeah.
Whatever you think
just
about
wait.
to be, you're not going to get
wait.
it. You thought you was upset. You thought you was unsatisfied now.
This is the way.
That's the most realistic part about the show. I'm like, but this is how like real life is. Things are not clean. They're unsatisfying, and sometimes bad people do bad things, and that's just it. Oh, that's
man. I remember a little bit about how I felt playing the game, and because you're playing as Joel for most of the game, I really did feel like, man, this is something I gotta do. Like, I gotta go save Ellie. I gotta do this. Like, there's no way that this is right. Y'all weren't even trying to find another way to like get this cure together. You just straight up, and you denied Ellie a voice in making that choice. And I know that she's a child, so she can't really like make that choice. But like, we learned that she's kind of adult-ish. and so maybe she could have had some input there, and they just straight up didn't even like consider it. They were like, nah, we're sacrificing you. And
What if she say no?
and I do want to point out that this was not a guarantee. Right? There was no guarantee that they were going to come out with the treatment. That wasn't what they said. They said, we think we can find something here that'll help us. We think we can isolate these neurotransmitters or whatever, chemical messengers. That was kind of a weird way of saying that, but whatever. And your question, what if she said no, which we don't think she would have. We think she probably would have said yes, but what if she said no? Like, yeah, what if she said no? Like, you should give her that choice. I mean,
the Fireflies are definitely going to put her down.
Yeah, that's not right. That again, we're talking about like how do we gain and lose our humanity by violating other people's own control over themselves, right? Or their autonomy is not the way that it's done. And
would you kill somebody to save the world?
What's up?
Would you sacrifice one person to save the world?
I don't know.
I'm saying that's real. I'm just saying. Yeah. You may sound real easy to say right now in this thing, but like it's.
It's what Marlene wrestled with, right? Like she said, I can't kill you. And then she steeled herself and did it, right? But could I do that? I don't know. I don't think I could shoot one of my friends or my wife or my, something like that. Like even if I quote unquote had to, I don't know that I could. It's an impossible, right? All of these are impossible choices. And so, and that's the point of the show. And so I'm not complaining that that's an impossible choice. I think it's just like, that's the depth and beauty of this show, and the hard part about this show is there wasn't quote unquote a good choice, right? Everything was a bad choice all the way around. But anyways, during the show or during the game, I definitely felt more like Joel is on not the right path, but I am with Joel. Like I understand, I want to save Ellie because we've come to know her and care about her, and we understand like. You're going to do the things that you do for the people that you know, like fuck all the rest, right? Like I don't owe not David, as a guy in the actual show. I don't owe, Leslie from Wichita anything like that. That's not my people. And as much as I want to look out for everybody, if that means that like you have to kill my daughter, like, nah, like it's not happening for me. So I get why it is. And then in this show, I swung a little bit more on the other side to being like, ooh, like Joel, you're going about this in like the exact wrong way. Like you're just straight up murdering everybody in this hospital. And damn, that just like brings you down a peg. And they really do show the violence and the horror that he's doing in the way the game probably didn't as much. So interesting that like, I think I was a little bit more on the like Joel side in the video game, more on the Firefly side in the show. And at the same time, if I was Joel, I think I'd probably try and do the same thing. Like you can't kill, it's effectively my daughter just because you felt like it. Like that's not the way it's done.
Well, it's not just
Wes would try with
like
zero skills.
Zero skills, yeah, for sure. I mean, I would definitely die, but
Wes would trip before he loaded the gun, and then end up.
I don't even know how to load the gun. Himself. I would just throw the gun at them.
Would you have gotten the gun from them in the first place? Like they was escorting him out. Sure. Would you have just gotten escorted out and been like, oh?
He'd probably like slap someone in the face. Like
they would just pick me up and like toss me outside like a bouncer.
The part she said, if he tries anything, shoot him. He tried something. Okay.
I don't know. I mean, like if you're, I mean, like you guys said, right? If it's someone are you willing to sacrifice them for the chance that there's going to be a cure here? And I think the answer for me is no. I understand. I'm fully with Joel. Like that's not a trade I'm willing to make.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those. I understand why he did it. He was wrong. Like there's just no, we just got a point blank period. It's wrong.
You can't say he was wrong.
I mean, absolutely, he was wrong.
No.
I mean, if you're in a situation, I mean, look, bro, we don't live in fantasy world where there is a definitive right answer. And clearly in this
world, you're just saying there's a right answer. You're saying he was wrong. Shut up.
Wrong.
Well, I'm saying he's okay. What I'm saying is that like there's both situations have undesirable outcomes. Like that's like you're not going to avoid harm. Harm is going to have no matter how you spin it. So when I'm making a decision,
that's what's really interesting about the show. Right?
So for me, it's like, okay, it's about if both decisions are going to have harm, you're going to pick which one. Ideally, you're going to pick the one that causes the least amount of harm or has the greater good. And even if it sucks that Ellie ends up having to die, if that's for the good of actually curing this plague and all the other lives that are saved, as much as it sucks for Ellie, I think, I don't think that is as much of a moral quandary as we want it to be. We just identify with Ellie because we don't watch we don't watch her perspective in this whole show. Let's not pretend that. I don't want to open this entire can of worms, but in real life,
you want to do the trolley problem?
No, I'm saying we have done the trolley problem on a much bigger scale in real life already historically. So it's not like there's some unknown precedent of deciding which lives you're gonna sacrifice. In fact,
I'll just say this:
it's more ambiguous. This one's a lot more clear.
I'm saying, and Joel Savon's brother. I'm glad I'm not you, bro. This is to Savon's brother. That's all I'm saying.
I'm just saying, if people say, "Hey, Savon, we got to sacrifice you to save the world," would I agree with it? Hell no. But what I understand, if you got to take me out, absolutely, man. I get it. It's for the greater good. Like, it's also me.
Brian,
me,
I would
I'd
save
rather
you.
be me.
I'm saving you.
You would?
Yeah.
I would say you're an idiot.
Yeah, it's foolish. Also,
still saving you.
And again,
Anna, so right after the show ended, Anna turned to me and like stone cold, she's like, "Would you save me?" And I was like, "Nope." but I'm eating the bullet right after.
I'll be really sad.
We're gonna save the world, but I don't want to live in that world.
Yeah, look. Joel just lost a lot of sympathy points to me.
What if Anna said, "No, I don't want to die"? You just let her be taken by the fireflies.
Some things need to be done.
No,
and then I'm killing myself.
No, you can't be.
We go together.
No. Yeah, like that's selfish, yo. That's oh my god, that's really selfish. Like on some stuff.
Yes, life is selfish sometimes.
Yeah, but Joel lost a lot of points. Or the biggest thing that made it hard to empathize with Joel, and the show leaned into this, was that when he was killing the people, it wasn't just I'm trying to save Ellie. It became personal and a lot harder to empathize with when he's going for. People were incapacitated. People were like, "Yo, I give up. I yield." When you're still killing people at that point, okay, are you actually trying to save Ellie out of you caring for her, or is it out of your own selfish desire of you can't let go of something that you care about?
I think it was both. That's why I think on this one I was leaning a lot on the Firefly, not a lot, a little bit on the Firefly side, because you could tell he snapped, right? He wasn't
the way he was executing them people.
Yeah.
The way he was executing them people, that was personal. That's not like you don't get, there's a way, even if you go about something that people don't agree with, how you go about it still matters. That's why there's first, second, third degree manslaughter. All might have the same outcome of a dead person, but the context leading up to it still shows that we judge that, in tears. And when you got dudes on the ground giving up, non-combatants, you shot them in the leg, they are no longer a threat. You out here slitting throats to save ammo.
No,
the doctor didn't comply even a little bit. The dude there was multiple dudes who was on the ground.
The guy on the ground, but the guy on the ground, like, what is he gonna do? He's gonna like stop and like handcuff him to the door, so he's not a threat anymore. Like, this man didn't have handcuffs; he had to go get Ellie.
So he needed to go, get a knife and slit the man's throat. Like,
he should have shot him in both hands.
My point is that they made it clear that Joel wasn't just trying to fight Ellie.
100%.
He was trying to brutally put down anyone who stood in his way, and that's two very different ways to characterize the dude's
I don't think
violence.
It was very different, but yeah. I agree.
When he went into the thing with the doctor, and the doctor hesitated, he didn't like shoot him in the leg. And we've seen Joel before using violence to he will incapacitate you at the very least. He did not even, that doctor was not a real threat to him. He shot that man in the head without even half thinking about it. Like, that's, that is, at that point, I mean, beyond that, how you go about it it's different. It's not like he knocked him out, or he pistol whipped him, or he shot him in the leg and kicked him in the face. Or there's a bunch of ways he could have been super brutal. No, that man, he didn't even think about it. Pow, in the head. Like that.
Good shot.
All of that.
He was in full on like seeing red, tunnel vision. Like,
and all of that speaks to your motives. And again, I think that ends up coming off as more selfish. I don't want to lose the thing I care about than, I care about Ellie and I want her to live a full, long, and happy life.
Yeah, but that's what it is to be both. That's what it is to be a parent, to be a relative, to be a loved one, right? Like, you cannot lose those people in your life, and you're going to do everything you can to make sure that doesn't happen. And like for Joel, he's the Liam Neeson of the situation. Like, he's got a particular set of skills, and that's what happened. And we know, like you said, like, this is one of his flaws, is he snaps and he becomes super violent. And that's what happened here, right? Like, and that's like, again, and he's losing himself in that process as well, and that's unfortunate, and that's where we're like,
It's
ooh,
like,
like this is
yeah,
problematic.
it's the toxic version of love. There's
Yeah.
the Disney like parent who loves
No.
their kid and it's healthy love, and then there's the villain. Oh, you can't let go of this thing you love, and now you've lost everything because of it. Love, like just because it's well intentioned doesn't mean, I don't know. To me, people might have the different opinions. I think that this Joel's actions were fueled more by his own selfish motivations than just Ellie's well being. Like that's part of it, but I think especially what we saw episode with the suicide attempt and him feeling like joy again, for me, it was he doesn't want to lose. Rather, he doesn't want to lose Ellie. Rather than more of that than he doesn't want Ellie to lose her life. I mean, to me, it was he can't let go of the thing he cares about. Rather than the thing I care about needs to go and be free or do what it wants. Yeah, I'm curious what other people think, but that was Joel came off as very selfish to me in this episode, top to bottom.
Yeah, it's totally
Which is
different when you
good.
give him more of a backstory. He wears his heart on his sleeve a lot more than in the game, where he's just stoic for the most part, and basically killing faceless, nameless, characterless NPCs, right? So that doesn't carry the same weight as it does on the show. So in this, he feels a lot more conflicted to root for, I think, um, than how you felt, Wes, playing the game, which is the same way I felt, to be frank.
Yeah.
But yeah, like everything you said, Savon, I think a lot of that is gonna come across in season 2 when they cover The Last of Us Part 2.
Mm-hmm.
These are a lot of the same things we talked about in one of our very first Confidently Wrong episodes when we when we broke down that game, and so these are the same themes, and I I am encouraged by the fact that they're coming up now, because I know
Mm-hmm.
just like how important those are going to be in the next season.
Yeah.
But I
Laying
want
a
to
lot of good groundwork.
But I want to like be clear on this part. Like again, what and this is like props to the show. Again, part of what made the Joel decision thing work so much better in the show is that I think in the game it was a lot more ambiguous of what Ellie would have actually have wanted, and I think you still might lean towards she'd say yes, but I think it's a little bit more iffy in the show. Again, they sell us way harder on like, yo, she absolutely, with everything she's been through, would definitely want to sacrifice herself. And so I think in the game, that part, because you as the player is a little bit more up in the air. In the show, they're actually very explicit with it. I don't know if y'all watched the HBO after episode thing with the directors, but even then, they made it clear from like their perspective that Ellie knows that Joel is lying and knows that she would have sacrificed herself. And then the lines about Marlene saying, hey, even that Ellie would want to do it. They make it clear kind of throughout the show that Ellie was absolutely about that life. And it makes Joel's decision like a bit, again, it frames it as a bit more selfishly of, it's not like you didn't know what she wanted. You know her enough to know where she was leaning on this. And so it makes his decision that much more impactful of, okay, you say she gets to have a life, but if it's not the life she necessarily would have wanted, you did this for her, but at what cost?
I'll say this though, Marlene saying that she knows that Ellie would have said yes is a little bit of bullshit, right? Like that's like, I'm trying to. Yeah, it's self-serving, right? Because she didn't tell Ellie. She didn't give Ellie the choice. If she was so sure that Ellie would have made that choice, then she would have told Ellie, like, this is the situation, right? And this again is coming to that relationship that you were saying, like Marlene feels this responsibility, but she never got to know Ellie. And if she had known Ellie, she would have been able to have that conversation with her and like figured it out with her. But she didn't trust her. She never got close enough to Ellie to really make that choice. Once she probably knew way back in Boston, like, hey, this is what it is, she's not going to get close to her. She's not going to like try and know her. It's like, right, you can't name the animal before you kill it. She can't get too close. And so that's why she doesn't know that she doesn't know for sure that Ellie would have made that sacrifice. And, Ellie through the whole trip doesn't know that she has to die, right? We don't know that she has to die. And so I don't know that it's fair to say like, yeah, for sure Ellie would have said, yeah, it's cool for me to die. Like she had been through so much to survive to reach this point. and then at the end she has to die, right? Like that is a hard choice. I don't think that's an easy choice. She was never ready to die throughout this whole show.
I might disagree with you there. I think in this particular episode, with Ellie feeling so disconnected and distracted during all of her interactions with Joel leading up to the hospital, I kind of got the implication that she did know that that was the end of the road for her, that she knew that she would have to sacrifice herself. And that was part of the weight that she had on. It wasn't just the trauma of everything else that happened before, but it was
interesting. I read it as the PTSD.
She knew that this was it.
Yeah.
She already had a good idea of it. It's possible that Marlene even talked to her about it off screen at some other point in time. And that distance was the thing that was actually separating her from Joel in those moments. That's just another reading.
Yeah. I don't think Marlene would have said it, but I do agree that maybe there's some sense that she's having that, like, ooh, like as we get closer, like what if that's one of the possibilities is maybe I die in this procedure, or, she's considering that at least. I think that's a fair reading of it.
Marlene was the realest G this whole episode. She had the will to make the hard choices, was willing to make the hard call to save humankind. R.I.P.
She put a
Marlene.
bullet in her best friend.
She put a bullet in her best friend, made a promise, and then was willing to break that promise to save mankind.
Save humanity.
Wes, the way they showed it in the show, it was clearly not meant to be maybe up in the air. Like, they had multiple just dialogue in the show that clearly was them trying to establish, like, hey, they could let them do this. They could make this thing happen if like they get to do their work. This wasn't like a coin flip situation.
I still think it's a maybe.
I mean, even when Marlene was talking to Joel about it, I felt like that dialogue was to make it clear, like, hey, this isn't them just kind of taking shots in the dark. It's like, hey, we have a good idea of how this works, how her condition works, and how that can be used to create a cure. That felt very much, in fact, more so in the game. That felt like
maybe I'm just like,
in case there's some confusion.
Yeah, they actually came up with the logic.
Yes, like I think that was them trying to say, hey, in case there's any confusion, this cure thing almost certainly will work. So if you're wondering about whether or not, was Joel justified in that, it really is kind of meant to be framed as like, hey, it was humanity or Ellie. Joel made his call. Was he right? The answer's up to you, but don't think, maybe he was right because it wouldn't have worked. No, they would have written in some explanation of, maybe it can't work.
Okay. I'll come at with these two things is that I think maybe just having some like experience with like science and biology and whatever, like this is what I teach in school. It's like I don't think that you could say this was as sure of a thing as like you're thinking. So maybe that's why like in my head during this whole thing I'm like there's still a whole lot of like variability here and like not. So maybe that's why I was thinking that way. Brian's laughing at me, but like maybe that's why I went at it that way. And Savon,
get this man out of here.
Thought it was more of a guarantee.
Get him, Brian. Get him, Brian.
I just love that you threw down. I'm a science teacher in high school, so
yeah. I'm not saying I'm right.
Based on my expertise.
Shut up. It probably wasn't gonna definitely work.
No, I'm saying maybe that's why I interpreted it that way because I'm coming from that side of it. And so maybe I just missed it and maybe you're right. Maybe it was more of a guarantee in the show. I did not see it that way. I saw it as I thought she said the doctor thinks this is how it works. This is what we're doing. If we can isolate the chemical messengers, that'll be something. But it's like all of that I'm thinking in my head. I'm like, that's a really hard thing. And like, I don't know how you're going to produce these chemical messengers once the thing is out of her. So there's like a whole bunch of steps that you got to do. So that's why I was like, I don't think this is a guarantee. So, but if you're saying like it was a guarantee and both of you were on that page, then that's fine. I think that makes sense given that it was more of a thing.
As someone who eats and consumes lots of mushrooms, who loves mushroom pizza, I got to say something about this is fishy, man. Like this whole cordyceps thing, I don't think it's going to work.
Yeah. Maybe that was just my bias during the whole thing, so I'll own that. I'm
hating on you, Wes, but I hear you.
We just know that you're Team Joel. It's all right.
I am, 100%. So I was already biased towards that, right?
Yeah,
but like I said,
Joel.
during the show, I did feel like the way he went about it, like you said, the way he went about it was like kind of off the rails, right? Like, and so we're going like, oh shit,
on
like
the rails way to go about it. Like this
like, he was there. There
Someone
was
was
definitely
gonna die.
a moment of like, this was like, damn, like you're messing this up, right? Like there's definitely that part of it. But at the end of the day, I would still be on Joel's side of like, you got to save the people that are with you, you know, like the people that are in the corner. Otherwise, what's the point, right? Like you're just not there. And the second thing was, it's not as if humanity hasn't survived. Do you know what I'm saying? Like they're not extinct, and they're not going extinct. They're finding ways to survive. And so he's also thinking in his head, like, this is not like everyone's going to die. I get to be with Ellie. The people who are alive still get to be alive. And so that, I think, also is part of his thing, is like part of his calculus that he's having to do, or that he's making and trying to justify in his head why like this is okay, you know?
That is cartoon levels of selfish. Oh my god!
It's not,
I must say,
like,
F the rest of the world. We're
I
not
don't
extinct, so it's okay.
No, but
y'all
to
gonna be
say-
alright. Just imagine during like the bubonic plague, or like God forbid during COVID, it's just like, oh, you know what? Actually, we're all still here, so like, is it really that bad, guys? You know?
I mean, that's what people did. I don't like, that was way less of a thing. I mean, I don't know. Like, I think you're expecting people, or
Well,
you're
so
thinking
people are
that
out here resorting to cannibalism because it's that bad. I think, like, are we surviving? Like, is that, we talked about, would you want to live in this world? Is this a world you want to live in?
I just don't. I don't know. I don't understand how you can just be just like, well, the simple calculus is there was one person versus like, we're gonna save 30,000 other people. Like,
Because
I
people
don't
have
think
done that
that's
in
simple.
every war, in every, like, that already happens in real life in way less ambiguous ways.
but it's different. It's different when you're the one that has to do it. You don't think that's true?
But like the thing that he had to do in order to carry out that decision is also kind of wild. Right? Right? Like the real world examples we're thinking of, like somebody in a remote room just says yes or no. And then
Yeah,
that
and
decides the
that's
fate of
fair.
all these people.
And that's
Joel
fair,
is
yeah.
not just saying yes or no. He's also just murdering tons of people in order to carry out his decision.
Yeah.
Which makes it like severely worse in some ways. But you know,
It does.
like Wes,
but if
I
if
totally
they had
understand
let him
your
take her
perspective,
out,
though.
if they had let him take her, like, were they going to let him just like walk out with her?
Were the lives he took worth Ellie's life? I mean, because once you, like, you know, we're getting into that, like, all right, we're getting into, okay, how many lives are worth one another?
Were they imprisoning her, or were they letting her make her own free choices?
Are we gonna really open the conversation of whether the Fireflies were wrong for trying to defend the surgery that could save humankind? Like, that's a
No.
I mean, if
but,
we opening that
but
can,
to say
because
they
that's
were
the can of worms
murdered
we
is,
opening.
but to say they were just like murdered is like a little bit. Like,
I mean,
you know,
well,
you know what I'm
what
saying?
else would you? How else would you characterize that?
Well,
Were they not murdered?
I
mean,
Joel attacked them.
Their lives ended on the way to.
I mean,
Joel's
they were
rescue
also
of
shooting
Ellie.
at him. You know, it wasn't like nothing.
The man took the gun and shot the people in the stairwell.
If
He
you were-
literally
he was the
holding
aggressor.
him stone.
They were holding him at gunpoint. They would this have like, but this is also on them too, right? Like, you're right, but it's on them because if they had let him just take her out, he wouldn't have shot them. This is also true.
Right, should have just let him take Ellie. Yeah, the Fireflies should have
Yes.
just been like, so Joel just been like, hey, y'all, actually let me to her. Oh man, he makes a compelling case.
If-
I know
If
we should just let him to her and let them
someone
walk
took
out.
Kaya and said, you can't have her, we're going to kill her, I guarantee you there's no one who would say like, yeah, that's cool. Like, there's no one in my family who would be like, yeah, that's cool. Just go ahead and let them take her and kill her.
Yeah,
Like,
you mean,
oh,
that's
there's
why
like
you get
people,
why
there's
he
people
did it.
guarding her. There's people guarding her. So Wes, you don't have a right to go in there. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what this is. Like, he does have some rights to be there, and to like, she has some rights to like have some agency here. So I don't
What
think
about the
we could
rest
say
of the
like,
world?
oh,
Do they have
were...
a right to a vaccine? You know, it's like you every time
not
you
if
get
it
into
comes,
the
not if it comes at the price of killing someone who's not even aware that that's the price.
I don't know that everybody would agree with that.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know.
Well,
But
obviously, because
it's
Savon
an
doesn't
interesting
agree.
hard line that you're drawing.
Oh, we gotta ask. This is going on. We gotta ask the audience. We got
But I
some
don't-
real
yeah, but
disagreements here.
Yeah, but I don't think it's as easy as what Savon is saying either.
Ask
It's
the
like
Family Feud
well,
board.
Well, I don't think it's
Well-
easy from like a personal decision perspective. I just think in terms of, but at a certain point, you do have to, like, you can take into account the human feeling perspective. You have to, but when you get right down to the nuts and bolts of it, and especially because, and again, I get the privilege of being an outside reviewer of this. You know, as a viewer, I don't have any personal stake in this, so of course that makes it a lot easier. But yeah, I mean, when you get right down to it, I'm gonna be that person who leans towards the needs of the greater over the individual. Even now, like with medication, there's all kinds of medications and stuff that go out where statistically certain people are gonna have a you know, the FDA literally, like, when it comes to even medication, like important stuff that genuinely helps us, there's a certain margin of error of like, yo, X amount of people are gonna react really awful to this, and we try to have the means to support them, but like, yo, that is considered an acceptable risk for what the larger group. Now, whether that's right or wrong, I don't know, but that is already baked into our lives in ways that are way less or arguably more complicated than what the show presents. So I'm just saying, it's not, as we already do this needs of the many thing. And, you know, there's situations where there is going to be death on either side, no matter how you spin it. So if your goal is just to avoid that, then you're going to be disappointed, because in that case, there are no right answers. But I think even when it's like two really unfortunate answers, I think there's still a preferable one. And, you know, it sucks for Joel, it sucks for Ellie, sucks and all that. But like, yo, if that means saving the world, that does not feel like a difficult outside decision, even if it's hurts from Joel's perspective.
I disagree.
Also, I just don't want to. Also,
I think that is a hard decision.
Man, hey, viewers, just want y'all to know, Wes would let all y'all die. Just letting you know.
If it meant that my
Wes
daughter
would never be
lived,
a good president.
Yeah, if it meant that my daughter lived, yeah, no, the rest of y'all are fucked. Sorry.
And that's one of those, we get why you did it, Wes. People also be like, hey, yo, man, you tripping. Both things are simultaneously
Absolutely
true.
not. There's 100% people out there, not 100%
100% of people?
There are definitely, let me just say it that way. There are definitely people out there who'd be like, you're not fucking taking my child. Like,
I would take one for the team, world.
I don't give a shit.
I would
Like,
save y'all. I would just don't even build me a statue. Just give me, like, you know,
you're talking about
half-day
sacrificing
holiday.
yourself, though,
Maybe
versus
just like a pat on the back.
sacrificing.
I'm
like
talking about
your niece or
sacrificing
nephew.
either. I'm talking about sacrificing either, to be clear. Like,
Okay.
yo,
So
doesn't
you're
mean
like,
it's easy.
Your niece or nephew has the cure, but they gotta die. You're willing to just be like, yep, cool.
I mean,
I already told you, Wes.
I mean,
I already told you.
I mean, cool. I'm not gonna be okay with it. I'm gonna be crying and boo-hooing and rolling on the floor and sad and depressed and all that other stuff. And maybe I can't move on. But is that what I will ultimately be like? Yo, this is what we gotta do? Yeah.
Wes, I told you, man.
That's
And
like,
if Anna's got to go,
if the people
she's
around,
gone,
if
but
the
so
people
am I.
around, I would be upset if the people around me didn't be like, yo, Savon, we're gonna protect you because we're not gonna let you die for the cure. I'm like, y'all tripping. If y'all don't, what? Y'all dumb for what?
But they didn't give her that choice, and that's why it also creates a layer.
Like,
and
life ain't fair.
if they had in the show, that would have ruined it, right? Like they had to have given it that gray area.
Like,
well,
everybody can't
wait
win.
till season 2.
Everybody can't win, player.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Everybody can't win. Somebody
Such
got
a
to take
good-
the L.
If I'm not mistaken, Last of Us Part 2 settles the debate on.
Yeah, that's why I'm trying not to
100%.
like
Yeah,
ruin
yeah,
it. That's
so-
why I'm trying not
yeah.
to ruin it for people who ain't watching. I'm just like, man, look, it's cool. It's cool.
Part 2
I'm
definitely settles it.
Family, just know it's not any viewers, people who I care about, anybody listening, just know it really ain't personal. But like, come on, you might get a holiday, a statue, I get a memorabilia tat. You know, I put you on
That's
a t-shirt.
crazy to say it isn't
You'll
personal.
be remembered. You'll be
That's
remembered.
crazy to say it isn't personal. That's the whole thing. Is it's a personal
They
relationship.
died for our freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like actually,
That's crazy.
for once we could have somebody actually make a sacrifice that actually has a tangible, like, hey, yo, no, they did this and you got this direct deliverable payoff. You better be grateful for them. That's real.
That's crazy.
So
Should we do a tattoo?
should we do best hospital story or biggest bold-faced lie you ever told?
Ooh.
Ooh.
I
Just
can't.
kidding. I don't
I'm
think we
doing
can
best-
divulge lies here.
Yeah, I'm like, I got things to
I would do
lose.
best hospital story. I actually would have to think really hard. I've got a bad memory. I'm sure I've lied about things. Probably like, Mom, I definitely wasn't watching the Dodger game. I was definitely doing my homework all afternoon for sure.
Oh my God.
Didn't
Get
watch
outta here.
Batman.
What kind of lie is that?
I used to lie about that all the time.
That's not even like
and I'm
you
sure
know high stakes lies that
thinking
require
back
like
to this,
homework.
I was probably like 10 or 11 or I don't know, middle school or something.
probably
Like,
shitting
my
a
mom
brick.
100% knew I was lying. Like there's no way she didn't know I was lying. Right? She
I
had to have
some-
known.
I had some elite lies. Oh man.
All right. So let's go with hospital
Okay.
story.
Best hospital story.
Yeah.
Best hospital experience that doesn't
Best.
involve Joel shooting up everybody there.
All right. You want to go first?
All right. I'll throw out one, which I have mixed feelings about sharing this, but I'm gonna share it anyway. So like several years ago, my dad was in the hospital and he refused. He had to stay like several nights. He was having testing done, and he refused to have a catheter implanted.
Oh, no.
So, but like he wasn't strong enough, and I think he was also connected to some machines where
Yeah, you couldn't go to the bathroom.
he could not go to the bathroom. So you know what this man did instead? He'd be like, he'd send me out of the room and go to where the ice chips were, because over there were piles of plastic cups, and he'd have me fetch as many cups as I possibly could and put them on the tray table by his bedside. And so during the night, whenever he had to go, he would just take one of those plastic cups, put it under the blanket, and just let loose.
And pee into the cup?
And pee into the cup. And then he'd have the nerve to wake me up and be like, "Hey, Brian,
Go flush it.
go pour this out. I'm not holding on to this pee cup under the blanket." And so I'm just there like every hour or so emptying out the pee.
That's
and
some
then
bonding.
whenever we're low on cups, I'm getting a stack of cups.
See, Brian did not sacrifice his dad's comfort at all. He was there for him, Savon.
Oh my
Wes,
God.
you're not gonna
If I
make me-
could put the catheter in him, I would have.
Wes, you are never gonna make me feel bad about this. You will
All right.
try, you will fail. Sorry, I believe in the collective good.
Oh man. So in 2005, this is like my junior year of college, I got a collapsed lung, and so I was in the hospital.
Oh, I remember that.
Brian came to visit me in the hospital, and
Just
so
once.
so did Jen. So did my wife. We weren't married at the time, but she came to visit me.
You know, it's
But
just like a
at
holla
that-
holla.
Did you tell her you were heartbroken and that's the reason you were there?
You take my breath away, girl.
and I really
Too
could not
soon?
breathe.
Missed opportunity, Wes.
Well, I was just gonna talk about how like I just felt like crap for that entire weekend. I was like dry heaving, I was throwing up. I was gonna talk about that, but what your story about your dad, I also have a pee story in the hospital, but it turns out less
Uh-oh.
happy. So I couldn't get up because I was tied to a machine like your dad was. And so, and I don't know, the nurses like gave me a some kind of cup, but it was like meant for this. It had a handle on it or whatever, and you're supposed to like pee into it in the bed, I guess. But it's really hard to pee sitting down, like sitting on like in a reclined position. It turns out that this is not an easy thing to do, especially when you've got a chest tube in you, which is just a big plastic tube, like just stabbed into your side, draining out the fluid in there. So it takes me maybe a good 10 minutes. I'm just sitting there with like the cup under my like, junk, and like it won't come out. Like mentally, I'm like, this is wrong. You can't pee in a bed. There's just this mental block of, no, this is wrong. Like you got to go in the toilet. That's the only place you go pee, not in the bed. That's not where you do this stuff. And then-
social conditioning is too strong.
You've been
Oh, it
trained.
was so strong. And then finally I go pee, it's whatever. It's a normal amount. I put it on the side.
The normal amount? What's
I
the
don't
normal
know.
amount?
I don't know. It wasn't a lot. It wasn't a little bit. It was just the normal amount. So I put it on the side on the bed, and I'm like struggling because like my chest is like just in a ton of pain, and I'm like pulling my sweats back up. I was wearing sweats, thank God. And then my dumbass just like my elbow or my wrist like tapped the bottle, and I hadn't capped it yet.
Oh.
So I did all that
Oh,
work
no.
for 15 or 20 minutes, went through all this discomfort. I was like in pain sitting up, And I went through all of that just to knock the pee all over the bed and myself. Anyways, I could have just peed on myself. I could have just saved myself all the trouble, and it would have been exactly the same. So that's my best hospital story.
So did you ultimately just pee on yourself? From
Ultimately, I peed on myself, but with an extra couple of steps.
Yeah, long, like a Rube Goldberg piss.
Why didn't I just take the time to put the cap on, or I don't remember how it's sealed, but to close the container? Why did I not? Maybe I didn't have a top. I don't know. I'm not sure what happened there. It was a big fail all around.
Beautiful. All right, Savon, what's your pee story?
I don't want to share. Y'all nasty. I don't want to share any stories. I don't have any that are nearly as nasty, and it makes me grateful for my lived experiences. So I'll share a very lighthearted, not nasty story of when I was 18. I had a torn meniscus and I had to get knee surgery, and that was my first time having surgery. And I just remember that was a really fun day because I went to the hospital at 4 a.m. whatever. They prepped me for the surgery. They put the little stuff into your wrist, and it was just cool to see, all the cool modern medicine stuff they're doing. So they put like a shot in my hip that turned off my leg, which was pretty cool because
you couldn't move it.
Like it was turned off. Like I was pinching it as hard as pinching it enough to draw blood. I'm like, oh, I don't feel diddly squat. It's pretty cool. And then the rest of the day was
pretty
just
cool.
I mean, just objectively, they turned off a limb. That's just from a just pure science perspective. That's kind of lit.
I agree. It's cool.
I forgot you're the dude that ordered the Anatomy of Marvel in the mail and was super excited about it.
That wasn't necessary. You didn't have to do that.
It's context, it's framing.
But yes. And then, so the fun part about that day was, multiple times they would do the little stuff where I guess they turn on the morphine or the stuff to knock you out. And that day just consisted of me teleporting around the hospital and losing hours of time at big chunks. They put you out and then you just wake up and you don't even feel like you went to sleep. It feels like you just closed your eyes and wake up and 8 hours pass. So they're saying hey, we're prepping you for surgery. I'm like, all right, bet. Keep in mind for the surgeon, I met the surgeon weeks before. Hey, this is the doctor who's going to do your knee surgery. I'm like, all right, cool. Yeah, we talking. Okay, cool. Need you to count to 3. All right, 1, 2, close my eyes, open my eyes. I'm in a different room. I'm like, all right, cool. What's up? When Dr. Jones gonna come? We're gonna do the surgery. Oh, he done already. I'm like, excuse me. I'm like, yeah. When surgery went fine. I'm like, what time is it? It's 3:00. I'm like, it's been 8 hours.
Oh my god.
And it felt like nothing. My leg was still turned off, and yeah, it was chill. I went home, took my medicine. It was a pretty chill. I mean, the recovery process was pretty whack, but. Yeah, for me, it was just teleporting around the hospital. I have some others that are maybe not as pleasant as that one, but I want to give the people at home a palate cleanser.
Yeah, that was a good chase.
With another just body fluid story. This was just me marveling modern medicine and teleporting around Oshner Hospital.
I think you're the only person I know that would describe their hospital experience as teleportation.
Yeah.
Because that's the only person putting it to superhero terminology.
Yo, because that's what happened. I was like, hey, yo. It's not like you take because it's different. It's a different feeling from when you take a nap and you feel like, oh, I know I was out for a minute. Yeah. You don't know that you were out.
That's a good description. I like it.
Yeah. It's just,
I look forward to someday teleporting myself.
That's why Ellie definitely don't remember none of that stuff. I was like, nah, B. I didn't. When you out, you are out. You are just a sack of just organs and skin.
Could you imagine
David after dentist?
Could you imagine being prepped for surgery, knocking out, and then waking up in the back seat of a Buick? Whoa.
You'd be like,
that's teleportation.
You'd be like, why am I in a Buick?
I mean, it was ish. I mean, yeah.
All right.
That sounds
let's wrap it up. What are your final thoughts on The Last of Us Season 1? Anything we haven't talked about? Anything you wanted to add? Your last chance before we close it out. Savon.
I mean, it was great. I don't have any real complaints.
No notes.
No real notes. They did everything I would have wanted to do. There's tiny things that you could maybe nitpick about, but it's not really conductive. My question is just, all right, what is y'all plan for season 2? Because this is one of those shows where a season can look better retroactively depending on how they build on the story. So shows like Breaking Bad, older seasons are better because you see how it sets up things that happen later. I'm curious to see how they connect the dots of things that are left open-ended in Last of Us Part 1 and how they do it in Part 2. And then even more excited for like, all right, cool. What are y'all going to... They've done such a good job of adding new context and scenes to this. I can't even imagine what direction they're going to do with the next season. So I really think this show is great. You'll set the foundation of a great show. How are you going to use the pieces, the building blocks you have left to build an even better story after?
What a nuanced take.
I wonder if they're going to split up the next into 2 seasons and do 2 and 3.
Yeah, I don't want to accidentally spoil anything.
Yeah, it'd be hard.
There's a lot of story to tell.
Yeah, it's a
two.
really long story.
Mm-hmm.
But we thought this was a long story, and once you take out all the gameplay stuff, maybe it's not as long. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what they decide to do.
They have pretty good decision making about like the gameplay replacement parts. Yeah, I feel really confident about their ability to do that.
And phenomenal.
Yeah, and it's going to be some great storytelling opportunities, right? Because again, I'm not going to spoil the next game, but like they could do it as each part as 2 separate seasons. You could do it as 2 stories. You could have it as the stories happening at the same time, and you bounce back and forth. There's still those very impactful flashback scenes that we know about that obviously, even with things that we know are going to happen next season, there's going to be some really touching flashbacks coming. Like, there's a lot of ways they could tell the story of Part 2 in different formats. And either way, it's going to be, I feel like either way, there's no wrong answer.
Brian, in our podcast in episode 4, Brian ranted for maybe 5 or 10 minutes about the dog. It was so good.
All right. You was that mad when you was that mad about the
dog?
No,
he was just talking about how like you get to know this dog. You know its name. It's not it's not just an NPC. Even though it is an NPC.
It hurts. Oh, they also name dropped Shimmer.
Yeah, they did.
The horse.
Yeah.
Love that.
To be fire.
Yeah.
My only minor critique, and this is not a huge one, was just maybe like I felt like sometimes they tried to do things from the game too much. Like in this episode, she had to drop the ladder, and just like it just didn't actually feel that necessary for them to have to do that. That's a key gameplay mechanic, and it was a nod and it was an Easter egg, but like it didn't feel like it actually was needed here. Like they had stairs on all the other floors, like they would have had stairs on that floor too.
Yeah.
So just things like that, where it's like, you just tried to force it, and I get it, and it's fine. It didn't take me out of or anything. I was just like, maybe you're just trying a little bit too hard there. Like, it's a show. You can make it a show. It doesn't have to be a game, or whatever. But overall, I'm going 5 stars. I really did love this show every week. Out of 5. I really looked forward to it every single week. And I thought they did a phenomenal job. Like what Savon said, they did stuff with taking out gameplay, and then they added in a little bit more context or backstory, and they made things richer that way. And I think Mason talked about, and so did Neil Druckmann, talked about how they were really intentional about how they did that. And I think they did such a good job with that. So, yeah.
Just like one infected.
Sad that this is over. I want the next episode to start. Oh, yeah. Wait, what'd you say?
No, I'm to your point, kind of reinforcing your point about how the show was so well done. There were it was like how many? It was like 1 infected in like the last 4 episodes of the show. Or something like that.
And Left Behind.
Yeah, it was like there was that Left Behind.
And then one at the end here with Ashley Johnson.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Two.
But there are
after they shot the load with Henry and Sam.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is really just for the folks who are making those Walking Dead comparisons. This is what makes Last of Us, the show, not so much the games, but the show, so good. Is that you describe it to people as this post-apocalyptic show with the fungal zombies, and it feels like, oh, that's such a cool concept, and it's like, yeah, and it is, but like that's really not what it's about, dude. Like, as Wes and I, we talk about how much we hate horror and how stressful the games are. The games are a different level. Like, the games are legitimately survival horror stressful. This show doubles down on just like, no, this is like a people-based drama. And that genre shift from horror more into drama was a great tone shift for the show.
So I kind of wish there was a little bit more of the zombie stuff, but I think you're making the argument that had they gone that direction, it would have changed quite a bit about the show. And I think I agree with that, but
it would have felt more like Walking Dead.
I feel like it would have felt like there's a little bit more peril involved. And already there was a lot of peril because you're in peril from other humans, towards the end, but it would have been interesting to have just a little bit more. And I don't know, I'm not a writer, so I'm okay with it. I think they chose the way they did, and it worked out really well. But I could have used a few more like clickers or just a little bit more of that.
I got to pick those nits, guys. Like I was
Do it.
actually really disappointed by that very fact, right?
Yeah.
That there
Really?
was not enough infected.
How much
That
more
they
percent would you have dialed up the infected nature?
I would give us like maybe
Okay.
20% more mushrooms.
Okay.
So maybe 20%,
Little
maybe
shiitake.
15%. Yeah. Some portobello, something like that. Like the the horror aspect of the game is also, I think, a very important story. It serves a story purpose, right? Because it gives it gives urgency to their quest, to Ellie being a potential cure.
Oh
We
yeah.
have to believe that the world that they inhabit is, in fact, very perilous, and that something needs saving. If we are if we are spending half the season in the west coast of America and have only encountered two of these infected that entire time, maybe Ellie doesn't need to cure anything. It
Yeah.
like
That
what
is
is
That
what
such
is
was
an
going
that's
on
what
interesting.
there?
that's what I was saying
And
earlier.
That is such
and
an
then
interesting take.
a plus another
He just
an
said what I
additional
said
point
earlier.
I don't
an
agree.
additional point to that is that the connection between Joel and Ellie, I think, becomes all the more stronger when they have those moments of horror. So in episode 2, when they're in the museum and they're hiding from the clickers, like that level of tension, anxiety, I think that brings the characters together. And I think there were plenty of other opportunities to have more of those moments to build out their relationship. And, like I'm thinking about, the subway tunnels moment, red lights and stuff like that. I kind of I want those dramatic moments with the infected. And I think that'll go a long way to building their relationship over the course of the show. What we got instead, though, was almost a series of vignettes. It's like almost an anthology series if you think about it,
Hell yeah, that's what I
where
liked.
Joel and Ellie are kind of just like the recurring characters who are a little bit on the sidelines, so that you can have Bill and Frank, Henry and Sam, you can have Riley and Ellie, which is a little bit different, right? You have David right there. We're sort of just like jumping from one pocket to another. And I love all those individual moments. I think a lot of them are incredible, really top-notch acting, some great writing on top of it. But I felt like we were missing a little bit of something between Joel and Ellie by cutting out all the in
Mm-hmm.
between stuff. We're they're stars of the show, but they're also kind of getting sidelined in favor of telling these other stories, which are phenomenal. They're like great episodes. But that's something that was always in the back of my mind. And so at the end of this, I'm a little undecided whether or not the whole is greater than the sum of the parts for those reasons. Um, and plus, what happened to the mycelium? They they went out of their way to introduce this concept about mycelium and how you could wake up infected a mile away, and then it never happened. It just happened in that one episode when they mentioned it, and then never again. So, so there are quibbles like that where I'm like, this show is a great show, clearly, but there was room where it could have been one of the greatest, I think. So I gotta docket some points on those counts, but still overall phenomenal experience, and I can't wait for season 2.
You know what? I don't disagree. Oh, no, I do disagree. Those aren't poor.
Go ahead.
Look, this is what I'll say about just because most of the stuff you said, I don't disagree with. I will say the one thing I disagree with both of y'all on is still the percentage of monsters and infected in the show. What I'll say, and again, I don't, and maybe there's I don't think 20% more, but I am very happy to be in the camp of if they appear too often, they just become boring action sequences that involves them just killing them, not dying, because we know for the sake of the story, we know Joe not gonna get scratched. So like that, I'm glad they didn't go through all that because that to me would have gotten old quick. Of the infected attack, they shoot, they fight, they just barely get it out. All right, let's keep it moving. That would have gotten old to me. Like I appreciated that we got to see a bloater, and the bloater cooked them people with soldiers, and then that's just it. They don't kill it. It's not a boss that they beat. We just see that it's threatening. Like, I don't know. To me, that sequence alone sold me on how dangerous they were, and I didn't need to be sold more on like, oh, these things are threats. So I like that there's no, oh, we beat them in a fight, or oh, we overcame this strong. It's like, no, it's just that's. There could probably be a few more infected. I don't disagree with that. I think season 2 sets itself up for probably a bit more, but I don't know. We'll see what they do. They might double down on just the whole vignette-based story telling structure, which, has its pros and cons.
Well, let's wrap it up
there. I don't disagree.
What did Savon? What should the people let us know in the Instagram comments?
Yeah, are you on the team? Yeah, it was Joel right. Are you sacrificing? Are you not? Where do you stand on this trolley mushroom conundrum? Because we in the Confidently Wrong cast, we are a house divided. Yeah. We are a house divided. Wes would let all y'all die.
All of you.
I would.
I'm saving you and Brian. I'm saving Kaya and Jen. I'm saving my parents and my sister.
Wes, if you save me and let the world
I'm
burn,
saving Z.
I'm just like, bruh.
Might be it. I'm saving Albert. Albert, I'd come save you in Taiwan.
I'm saving the world but killing myself.
All right. Let us know at confidently_pod Instagram. Hit us up. We'll be back next time. Hopefully we're going to talk about Mandalorian, Pedro Pascal version 2. What else are we going to talk about? We're going to try to talk about Cocaine Bear. Is that what you want to talk about?
God,
I don't know if we really are.
If I end up seeing it.
Tell us what we should talk about next time.
Yeah, what's hot in the street? That's the real question.
All right. Brian will update us on Succession. I'm sure he's going to be watching that. All right, friends. See you later. Bye-bye.